In what is now the evening of my life, I find it the right time to look back at what has been done to a country which was a place to be proud of. In the years before my birth, my country, England, what part of what was named Great Britain and Northern Ireland, had values which, through the centuries and decades, became the process by which we were governed. GB and NI stood for things which nowadays may seem quaint and old-fashioned, but in the wider world we took for granted that our systems of both government and governance were better because we had seen what may happen if dictators seized the reins of power. I was born 15 days after the peak day of the Battle of Britain, when it was decisively proven to Nazi Germany that they could not waltz across the English Channel and into a desolate London. We had seen the rise of Germany from the ashes left after both the Second World War and the communist occupation ended. The difference from a prosperous and confident Western Germany, democratic, stable and prosperous nation, to the dim, dirty, stagnant and suspicious government in German Democratic Republic was a true mirror of what could be achieved with a capitalist government in charge. But I digress. I wish to speak today about the criminal injuries perpetrated on the country in which I was born. It took almost 20 years for Great Britain to recover from the effects of World War II, where we had also almost bankrupted our country while standing almost alone against Nazism. It is a truth that while we went to war against Germany because of the invasion of Poland by the German forces, virtually no one knew of the sinister evils hidden behind that swastika flag. And it was only in the final year of the European conflict that the death camps were uncovered. And even then, when the BBC's Richard Dimbleby sent back his first report telling of the unimaginable scenes before his eyes, the BBC flatly refused to believe him. There were many, many people who, throughout the war, had continually stated that we should never have made war upon the Germans. Those arguments were abruptly silenced with the news of the Jewish Holocaust. The years and decades went by. Politics and politicians ruled and fell. Some of those politicians are remembered, some with kindness, some less so. The greatest changes were wrought under the Tory government led by Margaret Thatcher. She was possibly the first conviction politician Great Britain had ever seen, and she was certainly the first who made mistakes and learned from them. She took on the miners when they wished to call a national strike, but she had learned from the disaster which happened when her predecessor Heath tried conclusions with the unions, and he was met with absolute failure. She ensured that coal stocks at the power stations were the highest in 20 years. She organised some power station boilers to be refitted to burn oil. She treated a generating staff unions to the highest remuneration ever asked, almost on the nod. It was only then that she unveiled the list of unprofitable pits to be closed, which brought the expected knee-jerk reaction from Arthur Scargill, a communist rabble-rouser, in his call for a national strike. Thatcher knew her man, and he never brought forwards for a strike, which of course would have made it official, and miners would have been eligible for benefits. Scargill knew he could never rely on the Nottinghamshire miners, who refused to strike alongside the others, so he led an unofficial strike. Thatcher's plans worked, and the miners trudged back to work, having lost a year's pay and ultimately their industry. But Thatcher was replaced by non-entities who couldn't run a pub now in the country, and in 1997 the fateful votes were cast to place Labour in power, with the rise to the Prime Minister's job going to Tony Blair. Some call him devious, but that would mean that he started off with good intentions. I would simply call him the nation's first liar. He had remade Labour to sound respectable, turfing out the communists and the fellow travellers. But he made too many bad compromises during his rule, the worst of which wasn't the Belfast Agreement, which surrendered Northern Ireland to the vicious murderers of Sinn Féin IRA into the devolved Stormont Parliament, nor was it his slavish support for the Americans in the war in Iraq. The worst was his easing of visa requirements for immigration into Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Historically, the net inflow into our borders was between 30 and 40,000 per year. Our whole system of governance, transport, housing, roads, hospitals, power generation was based on a population of around 59 to 60 millions. From 1998 onwards, inward migration took off, averaging 200,000 for maybe 10 years, with the majority from Pakistan, Bangladesh, Iraq, but then skyrocketed up to 2020, with the added numbers of illegal migrants coming in on lorries and later in the boats across the channel. The one thing which many right-wingers point out, that the overwhelming majority of both the boat crossing and the lorry cascade were single Muslim men of fighting age. Instead of the former robust approach towards illegals, which was to deport them straight away, the Tories simply wrung their hands and allowed the hotels to fill with these clowns, who get free lodging, food, cash, and later on a brand new flat or a house. And the British, who had patiently queued legally for a council flat or a house, were simply ignored. We have been reminded before of the Islamic world, the plans of the Islamic world to spread their filthy ideals. Islam ruled in Spain for over 4 centuries before the Spanish found leaders who either kicked them out or killed them. Austria itself was only saved after siege, but the Battle of Lepanto, where the Christian navies finally tore the Muslim fleets into ruins, was the high point in Islam's attempted domination of Europe. But coming forward to today, we see a different invasion has been taking place over several years. We see literal regiments of fighting age men in many towns and cities, stopping traffic for their so-called prayers. And then those same young men, stripped to the waist, waving their arms again in a heathen attitude. And the police will not go near them, because our police have become politicised. They will not upset the bloody Muslims, because they know they will lose any battle that begins. Since the years after 2010, when the Tories came to power, the one thing was ignored, was the huge rise in illegal migration. One only has to view the photographs of massed Muslims near Birmingham to realise that the invasion armies have already landed and are pushing all the time to expand their influence into our daily lives. Untold numbers of Muslims, their huge families, inclusive of multiple wives, are living off the fat of the land, and that fat is paid for by British taxpayers. We see what has happened within literally weeks of the Labour government coming to power, with blasphemy laws being discussed, so that if anyone says or writes anything vaguely critical of the Muslims or of their bloody Islamic religion, there'll be a speedy court case and either imprisonment or hefty fines. There is a way out, but we won't see anything done with this Labour bunch of Westminster, causing up to their Muslim arsehole buddies. But hopefully come the next election, we might see a right-wing government which has the character sense to commence getting rid of this unwelcome, bloody army. Thank you for your time, and I hope to see you again.